Okay, so in the last part of the tutorial we took a look at placing the values from our text file into our database table and how we set that up. Now we're going to take a look at actually completing this index.php file to actually allow our spell check to take place, and we're going to be filling in everything inside this spell check function that we've created. So it's important to know that we're obviously going to be feeding in a word into this spell check function. So presumably down here we're going to be creating a new variable called spell check, and that's going to be equal to the spell check function, and we're going to be feeding a word into that. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to loop through every word in our database that begins with the same letter as the word that we've typed, and I'll explain a bit about why we do that in a moment when we get to it. And with this line declaration here, or this variable declaration, this is going to either return, the function is either going to return false if no alternatives are found, or the word has been spelt correctly, i.e. the word exists in the database, and then we can base an if statement on this. So this is our line that's actually performing this function. So we're going to go ahead and leave that in just for now, but let's go ahead and fill in this function. So because we're going to be having an output from this function, we're going to need to create an array for that. So I'm going to create a variable called output, and that's just going to equal array. Let's just bring that over a bit more. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is actually performing our query. In fact, before that we need to sanitize our word, i.e. use the MySQL real escape string function around the word. So I'm going to just sort of redeclare or redefine the word with the value, but using this MySQL real escape string function. So MySQL real escape string and word, and this is just going to somewhat prevent SQL injection. So now what we're going to do is actually perform the query. So let's go ahead and create a variable called words, and this is going to be the query that returns the list of words based on the word that we've typed and the first letter, so all words beginning with the first letter. So for example, if I was to go ahead and type academy in here, it would only select values from the database table that begin with A. Now the reason for this is that if we were typing a word, we would almost always, sort of 9 times out of 10, assume that the user had typed the first letter of the word correctly, and therefore we're sort of speeding up our query by not looking through every single word in the database. So let's go ahead and use the MySQL query function, and we'll go ahead and start our query. So the first thing we're doing is selecting word, which remember is the field name that we've stored all of our words at, and we're selecting word and then obviously from English. Now this is where the multi-language comes in. If you were sort of allowing your users to specify a language, you could replace this with the corresponding table with any values or words that are displayed in different languages. So we're then going to say where, and we need to say where something equals something. So we're taking the first letter of every single word available in our dictionary. So to do that we use the left function, so word 1. This is going to take the first character of every word that's available in our dictionary. And now we're going to say where this equals and something in here. Now if I was to type academy, we'd need to chop out the rest of the text and only look where the words, the first letter of each word begins with A. So we're going to need to sort of escape from this string quickly and concatenate on a function. Now this function is substring, and inside here we need to specify the word, which is obviously the word that we've passed through to this variable, and we need to start from 0 and take 1 character. So this sort of function here is really the same as left. We're just taking the first letter of all the words in the dictionary and the first letter of the word that's been specified. So that's it for our MySQL query. What we need to now do is loop through our list of results. Now inside of our while loop, we're going to create a while loop to loop through our results. We also want to check that the word doesn't exist in the list of words that we've selected. Let's say I was to type in academy. I'll just explain over here once more. If I was to type in academy and this was found in our list of words here, we would assume that the word or wasn't found in that list. We would assume that it would have been spelled incorrectly. but if the word is in the array, we're going to assume that it has been spelt correctly. So to do this, we're obviously going to use a while loop. The first part of this while loop is just sort of creating a variable which we're going to call words row, and this is an associative array of all of the words. So let's just go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to say words row equals MySQL fetch associative. You might have seen this before if you've worked with database tables. If not, I'll try my best to explain it. And inside of here we're just going to place the query. Now we're going to wrap this all in brackets and check that this doesn't equal false. That's just sort of pernickety. It doesn't really need to happen. You don't really need to use this check, but you know, there we go. Now let's just go ahead and sort of return some data from this. So I'm going to say echo, and I'm going to echo words, or in fact we'll print, under here we'll go print r words row. So let's go ahead and test this out. We've already sort of called our function down here, so this now should return a list of words that begin with A. It has not worked, so I'll just see. Yeah, okay, so let's do it a slightly different way. Let's go in here and say echo words row word, and we'll just separate that with a comma. So let's now refresh, and you can see that I've typed in academy, which is visible up here, and we've returned every single word that begins with an A. Now what we want to do is check that inside of this words row array the original word actually exists. So if academy is in that list, we don't want to provide suggestions. So I'm here going to say and in array word, we're checking for the word in the array words row, and I'm checking that that doesn't equal that equals false. So if it does equal false, i.e. the word hasn't been found, we can continue with this loop. Otherwise we don't actually provide any output. So this basically means that if the word has been found, we don't loop through the results and provide suggestions. So inside of here we need to now work out a way where we can check that the word is, if the word is similar to other words that are found. You saw a moment ago in my browser, you can see all of these words here. We need to check if the word that's specified, i.e. if it's been spelt wrongly, is similar to the words that are found. So we're going to be using the similar text function, which we don't need to assign to a variable, because we the third parameter of this will actually provide us with a percentage, so you'll see that in a moment. Now we're checking if the word that we've specified is similar to any word in words row, and that is word, and then the third parameter is percent. Now what this function will have done is returned a percent, so I'm going to go ahead and echo percent, and then after that a line break. So now what we'll see is when we refresh, we'll see a long list of percentages of words that are contained within this array. Now what we need to do is check if these are greater than 82. Now I fiddled around with this and found that 82 is probably one of the most accurate percentages to check above. If the percentage is above 82, this means that the word is very similar, and therefore we can store it in our output array up here. So I'm going to go ahead and create an if statement, and let's just say if percent is greater than 82. Now if the percentage is greater than 82, I'm going to echo out word, words row and word, and then I'm just going to place a line break on the end of this. And when I refresh, what we get now is a list of words that are similar. In this case it's academe, which is obviously inaccurate because we've spelt the word correctly, but we can deal with that in just a moment. Okay, so in this case we want to store each of these words inside our output array. So output equals words row word, so we're storing each of the words in here, and now underneath this while loop we can go ahead and print our output. So let's go ahead and refresh, and you can see that we get this output just here. Let's just go ahead and specify another word. So I'll similar, I'll spell it like that. We see that we get a word here, similar, which is obviously similar, funnily enough, to that word. So we're getting a list of words output. Now what we want to do is we want to return this output array, but we only want to return it if it's not empty. So I'm going to say return, and I'm checking if the output array is empty. If it is empty, we want to return false. Otherwise, we want to return the output array. So now what we can do is, as we've called this, we can go ahead and just sort of display this out and print it out to the user. So I'm going to now say under here, print r. In fact, let's go ahead down here and print out print r. Let's just pull this along a bit so it looks a bit neater. Print our spell check, because spell check will now either equal false or it will equal the list of words. So let's go ahead and type in academy. You can see that's let's just surround this in brackets here. That's odd. Okay, yeah, so I've just tested this out quickly. Let's just go back and review this. I haven't changed the code at all, but it does appear that academy isn't in the dictionary in this case. Let's just double check that by opening that english.txt file. Let's just find academy. Yeah, so academy doesn't look like academy is found in here. Let's just double check. Okay, it is in here. Let's just test it with something else. So if I type academy, it suggests this word here. If I go ahead and type in similar but spell it wrong, so let's just say similar, it will recommend similar and similarity. If I type similar correctly, it returns false, so nothing is displayed. So hopefully that's cleared things up. Let's go ahead and now get on with the rest of the code. So essentially what happens now is, if this word is found in the dictionary, then we don't really do anything, we don't loop. If it's not found in the dictionary file or in the database table, what we do is we suggest a list of words using similar text, and then we put them into this output. Now we're returning false if nothing has been suggested, and we're returning output if something has been suggested. So instead of print r now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to use an if statement down here to check if this spell check variable that is obviously calling the spell check function doesn't equal false. So we're going to say if, let's just pull this down a bit, I'm going to say if spell check doesn't equal false, then we are going to actually print out a list of the suggestions, which we'll take care of in a moment. Otherwise, we want to go ahead and echo out to the user, and we want to say that the word has been spelled correctly or there are no suggestions for the word found. So in here, I'm just going to put this in paragraphs, and we're going to say X, meaning the word, I'll replace that in just a moment, spelled correctly or no suggestions found. So with X, what we can go ahead and do is just replace this with a variable. So this is going to be word, which is the word that has been submitted, and therefore it will just tell the user that it's either spelled correctly or not found. Otherwise, we want to go ahead and echo out the list of array. Now we're only just going to be echoing out the array itself. We're not actually going to be giving a list or anything like that, because with an array it's extremely flexible. If you want to do things with this, you can use the for each construct, and that will loop through this spell check array, which will obviously contain the suggestions. So what we want to do is we want to surround this in pre-tags, just so it's formatted nicely on the screen or in the browser. And we want to have spell check in there. In fact, what we actually want to do is print r spell check, and we want to write true there, which is going to enable us to take advantage of these pre-tags. So now what's going to happen is, when we go ahead and type a word, so for example academy, it will suggest academy for us. Let's just go ahead now and say similar with a few r's, and it suggested similar. If we go ahead and type in, say for example banana, but we spell it B-A-N-A-N. It will give us a list of words that look like banana and, for example, will be suggested as words. So now that we've done this, we've essentially created our spell checker. We've typed in a word, and let's just go up here and review it. We've selected obviously all the words that begin with the first letter because we're assuming that the user has typed the first letter correctly. We've then looped through the results where the word that we've supplied isn't found in the dictionary, and then we are checked using the similar text function to return a percentage. If the percentage is greater than 82, it means that it's more or less found something that matches or looks the same, and then we apply it to this output array here. We then return this output array on the condition that the output array isn't empty, otherwise we return false, and then we redefine this calling function into spell check. Checking that it's not false, we give our suggestions. Otherwise, if we return false from this, so we could say else if spell check equals false. It's not necessary, but you can do that if you want. Then we have words spelled correctly or no suggestions found. So for example, if we type in academy, something else similar, for example, it says similar spelled correctly or no suggestions found because the word similar has been spelt correctly. So that's essentially the spell checker. Quite easy to do and extremely easy to do using the similar text function, and by using a database we have a significantly low load time for this as opposed to loading the file in using the file function.